very good afternoon to all of you, and a very good afternoon to all my panelists. Let me begin by saying that in this very difficult times of the pandemic, if anything we need to discuss on MedTech, probably there cannot be a panel which is actually such a balanced panel. I'm so happy to have on one side Mr. Suresh Vazirani. All of you know Mr. Vazirani. He runs one of the largest domestic MedTech companies. I should not say it's a domestic MedTech. It's actually, he's the chairman and MD and chairman of the global group called Transasia Erba group of companies. It's not only in IVD. We all know Transasia as the go-to place for the IVD products, but this is much more than that. And we have to hear what Mr. Suresh Vazirani, CMD of Transasia, has to say how he handled the global pandemic that we are into. We have Mr. Alva, Vishwa Alva. It's so nice to have you, Vishwa, here. He is the MD of ScanRay. All of you who are following the MedTech healthcare scene in India, you wouldn't have missed Mr. Alva's ScanRay mention on various newspapers, various channels, because of the kind of MedTech medical devices and ventilators that he's working on. It's so welcome to you on the panel, Mr. Alva. Purnima, a great friend, and this is Dr. Purnima Sharma, and she is the MD of Biotechnology Consortium India Limited, BCIL. A warm welcome to you, Purnima. BCIL has been in the forefront of being a bridge between BIRAC and the startups. You know, we say BIRAC, the Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, as the bridge between academia and industry, and the role that BCIL plays is that it's a bridge between DBT and the startups, BIRAC and the startups, in terms of intellectual property, in terms of seeing what the startups would be doing. So she's a great, I would say, idea translator maker for a large number of young companies. A very warm welcome to you, Purnima. We, of course, have Mr. Raghavendra Vaggu. Raghavendra is known to me for several years from the GE Healthcare. He's the general manager of a company called Cytiva, but I still like to, it's formerly the GE Healthcare. He's the general manager, South Asia, India, of course, India and South Asia. And it's so nice to see you here, because domestic MedTech cannot be talked about without having a multinational company. We have an Indian MNC, we have ScanRay. I don't call it a startup anymore. I would love to call it more than a startup. You've crossed that startup league. We also have Cytiva, GE Healthcare, so, and the startup ecosystem player. So this is a great time to actually talk about what are the challenges that the startup ecosystem is facing. So may I start with Mr. Vazirani? What you've been in the thick of things. You are seeing the pandemic play out. What challenges did the pandemic cause in terms of sales, supply chain, employees, employee retention, Can you describe some of the biggest challenges and how you're overcoming them?
Yes, certainly. Of course, initially it was a big shock because it happened so suddenly. Nobody had any clue. And here we were, nobody could leave home. Lockdown all the year.
The voice is resounding actually, it's not clear. Sir, your voice is not clear.
Yeah, is it?
Except the speaker, everyone else should mute. It's an echo coming from the mic of the speaker. So please keep your mic on mute if you're not speaking.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
It's better now. Very good. Yeah. But fortunately, I must say, very quickly we put our act together. And I must say, we must be one of the very few companies who really had almost no lockdown. In the days of the lockdown, we managed to get all the permissions, get our factories started, our office started, and the most important is our field service engineers. You know, all the hospitals depend on our field service engineers, and we told our field service engineers, you are like the COVID warrior. So consider yourself as a COVID warrior, and don't worry about yourself, and get out to the reluctance, fear, nobody. But I must say that all our engineers were out in the field every single day, and there was no interruption in our after-sales services. We supplied them with PPEs, we supplied them goggles, with shields, and also certain preventive medicines, so that they're well equipped. So that was as for the immediate, reaction to the pandemic. We thought beyond that. We said, here is our country which is going through a pandemic. What should we be doing? What more can we do? So we saw a huge opportunity in that, because as you know, initially the testing was very, very difficult. So we got our companies in America, our R&D labs in America and UK to work. And in very few weeks' time, they could develop the diagnostic test for PCR, they could do it for antibodies. And I must say that this is, in a way, I feel that this lockdown period has been the most productive part for our company. I think we achieved in these 5 months a lot more than what we achieve in a normal 1 year. So as Chinese are not very popular at the moment, but that behind every crisis, there's an opportunity. So we saw here's an opportunity to serve our country, to go beyond what is the minimum we can do and do the best we can.
Did you find any problems with the supply chain?
Tremendous. A lot of them. So we
How did you manage?
Go and get the passes for the supply chain. We had to arrange transport for them, to get them to their factory, to get the goods released. But it all worked out fine in the end. It was, a lot of work. We had to knock at the doors of every, government official to help us. And I must say that most of them went beyond their duty to help us. Most of the government officials went beyond their duty to help us arrange all these things. So as I say that, crisis has brought out the best in most people.
That's very encouraging to know that you had the support of the government while you were putting this up. Mr. Alva, as a devices company, first, can you say what kind of devices do you do, and what were your challenges, and how did you react to those challenges? What were your steps? You were in Mysore, right?
Madam, you have to mute. Deepanwita, madam. So We started off commercial production in 2012, and we make almost all the medical devices like X-rays, ventilators, anesthesia workstations, ECGs. We don't have CT and MRI, and hopefully sometime soon we will have both of them with us, both these products with us. Now coming to the challenges during COVID, Mr. Vazirani has spoken about it, and it was the same kind of challenges that we had and the same kind of support that we got from the government. We have been working. We have 8 facilities around the world. Out of them, Mysore, we have 2 units. One was acquired from Larsen and Toubro in 2013. And our Bologna unit, which makes X-ray tubes and ventilators, are the ones that were active during this pandemic. So Italy had a big crisis. We could not deliver the volumes from Italy because we had a lot of supply chain issues. Even though our unit was in Bologna, which was a little bit away from the peak of the pandemic, we could not deliver the numbers. But in India, we delivered about 30,000 ventilators because of the partnership of Bharat Electronics and DRDO and the government of India. It was very fast. Now coming to the challenges of MedTech, I think one of the most important issues is the supply chain quality. When you look at MedTech, it is not high volume, it is low volume, high precision, and automation of the manufacturing line is always a challenge. When you come to automotive sector or telecom or entertainment electronics, you have millions of pieces you make. We make about 1,000, 1,500 for the entire life of the product or the model. And this is one big challenge in the country which the government will have to look, and the private sector as well, because you have small volumes like aircraft, and defense components, but the price is by the Chinese volume manufacturing. The second is predictability of the country. There is a policy predictability, there is predictability of resources. This is one of the challenges that the companies have faced. GE was one of the first to invest in India in MedTech, then Philips and Siemens. We started off as an incubator in 2007 with 5 people. 2012 we started commercial operations. Now we export to about 80 countries, 50 products. We are certified with FDA, CEUL, but we are still very small compared to what the world has achieved. See, it's just India, US, Japan, Korea. In Europe, it is Germany and Netherlands that is strong. Rest of the countries depend on imports. And we, with about 250, 300 crores turnover, we are the largest R&D and full product company in the country. It's not a matter of pride. China has got about 16,000 MedTech companies, of which 300 are more than 1,000 crores turnover.
Absolutely.
The market is $120 billion plus, and we have a long way to go. Predictability, I said, because this is one of the biggest weaknesses of the country. It is not availability, but it is predictability that is very important. We have product design and domain expertise. We have mechanical engineers, software engineers. We have image processing guys, but product system designers are short in the country. We need stability in R&D resource. Attrition is one of the problems. Test labs, shortage of test labs. Then we have domestic.
Mr. Alva, I will come to general things in terms of what the country needs. But let me also understand from Dr. Purnima Sharma, what you've been talking to startups. What has been the impact of the pandemic on MedTech startups? Are they better off than startups in other domains because they are able to address the COVID-related challenges. What is your take on MedTech startups in India today?
Yeah, thanks, Deepanwita. Actually, I have no idea about startups in other sectors because we've been dealing with the medtech only, and I have had interaction with some of them because our association is with the startups because of the the SIB, Stanford India by Design, which is now called School for International by Design. And I would also like to take this opportunity to say that the ICMR is also coming up with a huge program called the Medical Device and Diagnostic Mission Secretariat, again to promote startups in this medtech sector. Now coming to the impact of COVID pandemic, actually there has been a mixed kind of reaction. Our startups basically have been new to the area because they have a few of them who have started commercialization. Maybe they'll be 4 or 5 years old max. Some of them even lesser than that. So definitely this was a challenge for them. And in terms of these sales, their revenues have gone down at least for about 50-60% of 40-50% of them. They said that the revenues have taken a dip. And this is because they have been into high-tech innovation, and these innovative products are probably targeting say a particular segment. And because during this particular time the hospital admissions came down, the patients also, they were very careful about procuring the medical devices. So the procurement the expenditure on procuring these medical devices also went down, and some of them maybe they come under the luxury bracket, so people were very cautious in terms of spending. And so there was a dip, but on the other hand we have seen some of these startups who were smart, they could strategize, they came up with innovative solutions, and they captured the market. But I would say that the percentage of such startups who could innovate and who could strategize and reach the market, because there were many who strategized. They started going into developing new, say, COVID-related applications of medical devices, but they failed. They could not reach the market because maybe, and some of them got funding. So I think I would also say that DBT, BIRAC, and DST, they came up with such good schemes to help. And some of our startups, they got funding also to develop PPE kit, to get those handheld sanitizers, very innovative sanitizers, so that there's minimum, this one, the contact, things like that. So there was a mixed kind of reaction, but I would say that all the startups feel that there has been dip in sales. So that is there. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, because we also work very closely with startups, what we found that many of them could reorient themselves to address the market, to build products for COVID. But obviously, everything is not COVID related. If you are working on a maternal and child health product, it is not always easy to make it remote access and relevant to COVID. So a lot of startups had that problem, even in the medtech sector. You're absolutely right.
I'll just add here, when you said the maternal and child health related, I was talking to one startup who's actually into this area, and he said that if you look at the statistics, the number of the newborns who've been admitted in the hospitals for, the diseases or any newborn related problems, it came down drastically by about 70%. So, one has to analyze the statistics, and even the heart patient, the percentage of the heart patient, who got admitted into hospital also came down drastically. So I think these are some of the statistics which need analysis, and therefore the devices which are targeting these, newborns or maybe the heart patients, the demand for them also went down. But on the other hand, the ones which are self-care, medical devices,
absolutely.
Demand went up. People were started, procuring them even at houses. So
yes.
Fecal incontinence, for example, that's a device. Earlier, the hospitals were a bigger segment, but subsequently, even they started getting demands from the residents, the people who were, hospital, means at a house. So I think there has been a mixed kind of thing, but definitely there was a lot, because a very few of them could innovate and maybe strategize. So I think if you look at the sector, startup sector, MedTech sector as a whole, I think there was a impact of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. Those who could do that really worked, but for many that was not possible. A lot of them actually went making devices if you ask me, PPEs or sanitizers, which that's not their core product, but they thought this would actually be a stopgap arrangement that they can do. Let me turn to Mr. Raghavendra at this point. How did you see the markets reacting as a multinational? How did you see the India market doing, the global market? Because you look at India, South Asia, love to hear from you.
So first of all, thank you so much for giving this opportunity discussion. The way I look at this is, this is a global reality that we are going through the tough times. While none of us would wanted to get into this situation, but unfortunately we are going through this tough situation. But then how do we come out of this, as a country, what are the opportunities that are there for a multinational, as well as the Indian multinational, as well as the Indian kind of companies? So the way we've been looking at it is, not as an opportunity, because this is not the right word to use in this kind of a situation. But then the way things are shaping up, the way things were moving up, in terms of, the issues, what Dr. Vazirani was mentioning, or Dr. Alva was mentioning in these tough times, keeping in view whatever the challenges that we felt, whether in terms of logistics, in terms of people, in terms of all those things. So this throws immense opportunity for companies like us in terms of what we can do, how do we collaborate, how do we enable the Indian players to ensure that they reach out to their targets. So while we may not be having a product to support them, but then we do have everything that they need in terms of the material that they would want to make, whether it is the rapid kits in the form of the lateral flows, point of care kits, or even the sophisticated molecular diagnostics. So we have all the solutions around that. We can enable, and we have been already working with a lot of companies who've been, shortlisted by the ICMR as one of the standard kits that the people have to use for the diagnosis. That is something that we are looking at. So from an opportunity standpoint, yes, it is a great opportunity for us to work with all the companies that are either in terms of diagnostics, or in terms of therapy, or in terms of preventive medicine. So we are working with in all the scale, in all the companies, all across the country. The way we are looking at is India is almost like 1.4 billion population, and today the pandemic doesn't care anyone. It can be very local, it can be very urban centric, or whatever you want to call. So none of us have a mechanism to prevent it or cure it. So that's the target that we are looking at. So if you have to look at the diagnostics, so at some point in time, I mean, that's the way we read. At some point in time, each one of us have to go through the test, not for the disease, but just to ensure that we have adequate antibodies to make ourselves feel happy that at least we have some kind of an antibodies. Either it could be through the what call herd immunity, or whatever you want to call. So that's the stage. We are using the kits to diagnose this disease, but as we move on, we see an opportunity in terms of the kits, or in terms of whatever you want to call it, whether it is the therapy or the preventive medicine. So that's where we are working.
Fantastic. It's so important. These collaborations have become so important nowadays. I saw automotive sector coming in. So lots of people actually said that if you need the manufacturing capability, we have manufacturing capability for ventilators and things like that. You come over. At times I've heard that while the sectors are very keen to do it, they may not have the technical expertise to do it. And companies like D would have both the facility and the technical expertise. And these collaborations are extremely, extremely important. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I turn to Mr. Vazirani now? What I heard is that you're building a large facility at AMTZ Vizag. That's coming up at a breakneck speed. What are your plans there? How do you really see this coming up? Because it's also AMTZ is a government supported facility, a BIRAC NBM supported facility. Just tell us a little bit about that. Also want to learn about the lab on wheels. So it was such a nice thing to see. Is that part of your CSR, or how did you plan it? A little bit on that, if you could just tell us.
Well, as you know, initially, sorry, again, somebody's microphone is on. Initially, everything had to be imported. All the COVID test kits were imported. This is when we discussed with Government of India and AMTZ. We told them India has the technical capability. It's not that we don't know how to do it. But somehow, for whatever reason, we don't have manufacturing right now. And we realize that COVID is here to stay. It's not something that will stay for 1 month, 2 months and go away. It could be a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year thing. We don't know. So this is when we jointly decided to put together a big plant, really. I believe this will be the Asia's largest COVID manufacturing, dedicated COVID manufacturing facility in India. It's 35,000 square feet, which consists of about 15,000 of clean room areas, huge. And I believe with this plant, we can meet not only India's requirement for all the COVID tests, the full range, right, from the rapid tests to the ELISAs to the PCR, molecular, and I believe we can export quite a bit too. Many other countries in Asia, Africa do not make it. And I believe this can really meet the needs of basically the emerging countries that we are targeting at. So these will be the low-cost products, ideally suited for emerging markets. And we're very proud that the factory has come up in 60 days, right from scratch to all the machines, QC equipment. In 60 days, the plant is ready. So that's, again, I say that could happen only in lockdown because everybody was so focused on it. The government was very helpful. AMTZ has been amazing. Dr. Sharma has been unbelievably, helping us in
completely agree. Absolutely.
possible way. So this, in a way, I would say is a miracle that such a huge facility, which normally will take at least 8-10 months in the normal times. But in this time, we could do it in 60 days. Similarly, we realized that even if you have the reagents and the equipment, there are no labs in the rural areas. All the PCR labs are in the big cities because you need the environment, you need the BSL-2, BSL-3 facilities, which are not there in rural areas. So this is when the idea of the iLab, the lab on wheels, came up. And that, again, in about 30 days' time, we got together with MTZ and BIRAC, and we launched the iLab, which is a fully equipped lab, not only for COVID. It can do all infectious diseases, testing for all infectious diseases. And as you know, Dr. Harshvardhan was good enough to launch it in Delhi and is doing a great job. And we have many more orders for it. So we are.
Big congratulations to you. This is fantastic. I think we really need to clone you. And this is lovely to hear because I saw all the launches, virtual launches, and I thought this was a fantastic move. That is it a CSR from your CSR, or it is also part government and part TransAsia?
is part of our MTZ factory project.
Thank you so much. So now I come to Mr. Alva. You were talking about your ventilator manufacturing capability. Did you also get these kind of collaborations going with some industries? How did you actually scale things up?
Yeah, we had a capacity to make about 5,000 per batch. And in February, March, we started planning for a batch of 5,000. On, I think, March 19th or so, we got a call from Niti Aayog, DRDO, and Health Secretary asking us to provide about 1 lakh ventilators. So, you know, in the history of India, since independence, we have been able to install about 15,000 ventilators in the country, ICU ventilators. Transport ventilators, anesthesia ventilators put together may be higher, but for COVID, we need the most advanced ventilators. And now we had to, scale from 5,000, which is also a stretch, to about 1 lakh. So we had a news release which said we would share the technology with companies that can scale. It was BML, BHEL, we had Ashok Leyland, Tata, who came forward to take the technology and scale it up. And I was in GE earlier. The speed and aggression of that company. So we chose Bell as the first partner. I think in about 3 hours, we had the whole team of Bell in Mysore. We started transferring the technology without even having any paper ready. There was no discussion, but we started having the classes and transfer of technology and supply chain activities. And in less than 2 weeks, we had a line that could make 10,000 units per month, which is amazing. And it is a big credit to Bharat Electronics. And just because Bharat Electronics is there, that such a feat could have been tried. Now, DRDO was another lab that, we had some components which had dependency on Europe and US. And they started choking the supplies because they had their own demand. And DRDO brought in some parts in 1 week from their defense vendors that would have taken 6 months otherwise for Scanray to develop. It is something like a dream. And in 6-8 weeks, Bharat Electronics, Scanray, DRDO consortium produced 30,000 ventilators, and we have given all across the country. The government ordered about 50,000 ventilators, and from this group. And if you take the supply chain, regulatory, the quality of the products, and then we had the government changing the specifications because the doctors, got newer and newer software features that they needed. And because everything was done in-house, we could very quickly add those features. So this is, in short, what we did during COVID with the ventilators.
This is absolutely amazing. What we have displayed as a country, it gives everyone the confidence that we can be self-reliant if we work in a mission mode. Hope we continue this we do not go back to our silo type of working, and we continue these kind of collaborations. It's such a beautiful story, Mr. Alva, to hear. I think it's very inspirational. Let me turn to Raghavendra. Raghavendra, let me ask you a policy question. Where do you see the MedTech sector in the next 5 years?
I mean, looking at the way it is growing, I think we have immense potential from the innovation that we have seen from the startups, what Purnima was mentioning, and also the companies that are evolved. What Alva was mentioning, or even Dr. Vazirani was mentioning. We see a tremendous potential in the growth trajectory, while multinational like us have, the only way that we can catch up with the way things are growing and with some of the policies that are coming up as an Atmanirbhar or whatever that been carved out, the only way that we could catch up with the pace is how do we collaborate, enable the companies that are in India who actually want to venture out to make some of the biggest or the most sensitive things, sensitive equipments, or some of the sensitive kits. So that is what we as a multinational want to structure ourselves, keeping in view the growth path that we see. I mean, if you look at, we are talking not less than billions. I mean, today with the way things are happening, and at some point in time we were more of an import oriented country, almost like 70 to 75% of the anything around MedTech or anything around medical healthcare or anything around the diagnosis was more of an import kind of a thing. From there, we have moved to at least where we can actually say that we are importing and also exporting to the neighboring countries and some of the countries. So with that, I think, there's a huge potential. This definitely going to run into billions. And only thing is, how do we catch this buzz and then convert this into the revenue? And also import-oriented region is what we all have to look at it. That's the way I would want to look at from an MNC standpoint.
Thank you so much. Mr. Vazirani, I've been hearing a lot about business localization. And of course, as Raghavendra mentioned, Atmanirbhar Bharat. What do you see as the future of the MedTech industry as an Indian MNC? What are the changes that you're foreseeing? Are we prepared as a country?
As I said, the pandemic has fortunately brought many blessings in disguise. One of them is the idea of Atmanirbhar. Our Prime Minister Modi has very well conveyed it, that in very critical areas like defense and healthcare, Atmanirbhar is absolutely essential. I think we all couldn't agree more. This is something we have been dreaming about. And the actions which have followed, that I think is really a wonderful thing. If the government keeps that kind of focus on the Atmanirbhar Bharat in the healthcare devices, I must say that in 5 years, India could reverse the current status where 70% of medical devices are imported, only 30% are made here. But I see that in 5 years, it can be 70% locally made and only 30% imported. And I think that will be a fantastic thing. India can do it, and with the focus from the government, I think it can happen.
Oh, fantastic. That is actually music to the ears, all of the ears that are listening today. Raghu, I'll come to you. Raghavendra, I'll come to you. But Purnima, I have a question to you. In this Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are all hearing the startups actually happy. There's government procurement. GEM is working well. There's a lot of talk about the GEM portal. Are there any specific policy asks for the startups?
No, so what I would like to comment on is that definitely, when we were interacting with the startup, they have seen that there have been a lot of positive policy initiatives taken by the government from the public procurement point of view. And, not only the GEM portal, where they came up with, a lot of modifications in the earlier policy saying that, they will have to specify, the origin of manufacturing, things like that. And if it is not done, then, those proposals would not be considered. Other than that, even streamlining, as was mentioned by other speakers as well, that even the logistics, ensuring that the air travel, everything was streamlined in those difficult times. So I think a lot of initiatives were taken. From the procurement point of view, this was positive, but what I think they want is, the policies if it could be more objective and transparent. So that is something our startups want, because just to give you example, for some of the times the tender which come, they ask for, CE marking or, FDA and all that. So this is something, and for some of them, this itself takes a long time. So, if the startups have to actually comply with all these regulations, which actually are not required also. One, it takes a long time, and then, if somebody has to, say, apply for these tenders in that shortest time, it's not possible. So I think more objectivity, more transparency in procurement policy is something that our startups would definitely look forward to.
So that's a very important point, right? I'm sure Asutim would, as one of the points to be put as they put the policy framework and submit to the government. Mr. Alva, this call for localization, it's just not in India. I'm hearing Singapore, Korea, US, China, all of them are looking at localization. As a company that has gone global and wants to be even bigger, how do you react to this? Is the Indian market big enough for you? How do we go into, because these are, if every market becomes localized, then how do you really look at it a little more inside?
Purnima, you have to mute. Purnima, you have to mute your mic.
Sure.
Okay, so talking about localization like Atmanirbhar Bharat, there is Atmanirbhar Italy, there is Atmanirbhar Dubai. So everywhere you have this. But in my view, Atmanirbhar is to form a cluster of friendly countries. See, today you can never be Atmanirbhar in this world. It's changed forever. And when you say, let's say, take a Scanray example. We have 75-80% localization in ventilators. That means that 80% components we buy in India. Now let's take PCB assembly. That in the PCB assembly, which is about 12% of my cost, I have about 60% of the sub-components, again coming from Taiwan, Germany, US. So if I take, let's say I manufacture the ICs here, then the semiconductor wafer will come from Taiwan, China, Germany. So if you go to the fifth level of localization, then you will be really Atmanirbhar. Now, I don't think that is possible, but if you put a 10-year undisturbed plan, whichever government comes, you will be able to get to a level of Atmanirbhar that is sufficient for the country. And for us, if our expansionist neighbor China relationships don't improve, then India, Italy, Israel, US, some part of Europe can form a group which can be Atmanirbhar cluster. It is not an Atmanirbhar country, and we have to work together. I don't think there is an alternate. And if relationship with China improves, I think China-India partnership would be one of the best to the world. China made mobile phones affordable, even though it was invented in Scandinavian countries. Same way, India can be the medical hub for the world if the government has consistent policies. We see a lot of change. Let's hope something happens. And telemedicine, home care, health tourism will change the way the world looks at India.
Wonderful. Actually, 2 days back, a friend of mine was saying it's not so much about Atmanirbhar, but it's Atma Vishwas. That is very important for us to believe in ourselves. It is not about wherever we see that we need a stamp of a foreign country to tell us whether we are good or bad. If we can believe in our strengths, that will be fantastic. And here I must tell Mr. Vazirani, it was Ravi Kaushik, the CEO of TransAsia. There was a chat and Ravi said this. And I said, absolutely. One has to believe in oneself.
Deepanwita, one small point. When you speak of Atmanirbhar, you should make products that can be sold in Europe, in US, in Japan. If it becomes, if you have a protectionist market where only Indian companies can sell, the product quality will drop drastically. We'll go back to the pre-90s. I think it has to be taken in a very, very balanced way. Atmanirbhar is global, but a cluster.
Fantastic. So actually it's 5:15 now. We have to take some questions, but before we take the questions, let me do some rapid fire wishes. Let's hear your wishes. If there is one thing you wish to change or something that should change, what would that be? All the panelists, there's a question to all the panelists. I'll first go with Mr. Vazirani.
Another thing Mr. Modi has given us, another slogan is "Vote Local," which is again a wonderful idea. But I do hope that it gets extended to every doctor, every hospital in India, not limited only to the government. I think every Indian should work for making local successful, vocal for local. That is my dream.
Raghavendra?
So the startup to scale up concept, what we have always been talking. Hello? Hello?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, so what I was saying is more in terms of the startup to scale up, while Purnima has been talking a lot about and we all know, the kind of funding that we've been getting to, from an ideation to a product. But unfortunately, the money that is required from a product to scale up is something that we would want to see. That's where I think, we will be able to encourage the innovation. We will be able to encourage the disruptive thinking, especially in a world like this where the old techniques might not work. We definitely want innovation. We definitely want disruptive kind of way, and that's where we would want to look at government investing from our startup to scale up. What the wish from our side is.
Okay, great. Purnima?
Please unmute, Purnima. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. From the point of view, am I muted? No. You can hear me, no?
Yes.
So, other than what Raghavendra said, I would say from the procurement point of view, although a lot is being done, but again, transparency and objectivity on procurement policy is something I would like to happen.
Mr. Alva, Vishwa?
Yeah, see, a lot of investment has come from US and Europe in the hope that the Indian market will grow. But that has not happened. We are always looking for a bright future. I think that the domestic consumption should really be quite high for the population and the potential we have. And we should also make sure that the government procurement is very transparent, just like Purnima said. It is predictability and continuity of policy for the next 10 years, whichever government comes. Let's make sure that there is a national government which will think about the future, cutting across party lines, and make sure domestic consumption grows if industry has to grow, or else we have an aggregate sector and what Bhutan calls as gross domestic happiness. So we have to choose between them. If you are industry, then work for consumption. If you want to take a balance, then take a call now. Let's have it green, let's have it agri-based and not so industrialized.
There is an entire move to say, even if your development is being redefined,
Yes.
so there are ways you can actually look at development with low consumption, with management, sustainability. I think the balance has to be there. Sustainability is a must as a not as a country, but as a global citizen, I think we all need to talk about sustainability. But yes, consumption. So what I heard, very important points, growth of consumption, looking at transparent policies, transparency in procurement. How do you make the world available to you when we make products that are truly global? That is what Atmanirbhar is, because we are not only able to serve our country, but we serve the globe. And we have the capability and we should be able to do it. So going to the questions, I have to ask our organizers to tell us what, if there are questions. I see one in the chat box that the organizers have posted, and it is something we discussed, but it says, how successful have the panelists been in moving to localization under the Atmanirbhar program? What percentage of your products are imported? Anybody wants to take a call on that?
I can talk on that on ventilators. You know, prior to COVID, we had about localization. But what was a big challenge is the flow sensors, differential valves, some solenoids which were coming from Europe, US. Now, why we did not localize is it is not commercially viable, not because technology is not available. For the volumes that, you know, the Indian government was buying about 3,000 ventilators a year, and most of it was Chinese, and it's Chinese or European. They were never buying Indian products before COVID. Atmanirbhar was spoken, but were never practiced. Now, if we had to localize that, we needed volumes. Now, during COVID, DRDO used Indian suppliers, and in 3 to 4 weeks, we could get parts. Now, can we go to 80-90%? Yes. But then when I go to the second tier of assemblies, I still have imports. To get to 60% in 6 layers of localization will take about 10 years. And the government, if we do not have time, we can just copy the Chinese model. 30 years, they have almost achieved 80 to 90% localization. I think if the entire world cuts off, they will still be able to survive. India, if the entire world cuts off, I don't think we will even have drugs, because APIs are imported. We just have the final. So it's a big debate. We cannot cover, but there is a possibility if we have the policymakers sitting together and thinking long term.
Mr. Vazirani, do you want to add to this? The question, again, I'll just repeat, what percentage of your products are imported versus made locally?
Oh, yep.
Yes.
Yeah, we import
Please.
percent of the products that we sell. 30% are made in India. And in addition to that, we export about 35% of our production. So these are the current scene, but we hope this changing drastically in next year or two. And our aim is to really export as much as we sell in India.
What about the import part?
Yeah, well, import will continue. You know, as I said, that we can become Atmanirbhar maybe up to about 70-75%.
Okay.
Everything cannot be made in India. Will take time. Sure. But I think if we can reach 70-75% level, that is pretty good. And we can, on the other side, we also export so that we become net foreign exchange earner. What we export is more than what we import.
That's a very, very, very balanced view, because we can all say that we have to become Atmanirbhar, but to be able to take a balanced view and say what is realistic. There is no point talking about stories that are not realistic. And when people join a webinar like this, they want to hear from the experts. Absolutely, like what both of you said, what is practical, what is realistic, what your aims are. So fantastic. Raghavendra, do you want to add anything to this?
Mr. Raghavendra, can you unmute?
Unmute.
So what I was saying is, from the beginning, I was just saying, our endeavor is how do we enable the companies, what we've been just saying, to ensure that they make the components. If we fall into the 30% bracket of what Vazirani was mentioning, and then help them to manufacture whether it is the kits or the components or the equipments, we'll be more than happy to be a part of this game where everyone want to be self-sufficient, but at the same time there are some critical components that you definitely have to.
No, the question is there a plan to make some of the devices in India from cytology?
That's as of now, no. But then the idea is how do we enable, how do we collaborate and bring the know-how. I mean, like, as you know, we've been in the industry for more than 75 to 80 years. And then we have been one of the leading players in most of whether you want to talk about the lateral flow kits, whether you want to talk about the molecular diagnostics, we have been one of the key enablers worldwide. We would want to continue the same way and enable the people and give the world-class tools and technologies to manufacture the kits that the world is looking from India.
Thank you. And that's a collaborative mentality that we need. We would, of course, want products to be made from here. Even GE makes product. This becomes just not an R&D base, also a manufacturing base for products for India and globally. That leaves only 2 minutes for us to end the webinar, and it's a fantastic discussion. Lovely to be part of this, and I have myself learned a lot. I hope Asuchum has taken. Can you just mute yourself, please, Raghavendra? Yeah, thanks. So it's been such a pleasure. And I'm sure Asuchum has taken notes, has recorded the session today, and would make the points that are raised here as pointers for the policymakers in the country. I know Mr. Ravinder, Joint Secretary to the DPII team, was supposed to join us, but he is unwell. But I'm sure the organizers, Asuchim, would take these policy level pointers to him to see how the government and the industry can collaborate. I would now request Siddharth Mishra to just come in and say, just to conclude the session.
No one there.
If that is, Siddharth, are you going to join the session, or from Asuchim's side, I will, as a moderator of the session, I'll thank everyone and say it has been a fantastic session. I hope all of you who have participated today have enjoyed, and please write to us, please write to Asuchim with any pointed questions that you have, and I'm sure they will take it up. So thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you,
panelists.
Deepanwita. Thank you for bringing
thank you,
such a wonderful session. We also got to learn a lot. Really, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.